Hi guys, hello. Today our target topic is Boolean homework. I know, I'm sorry. I know I said last time that we are finishing off with the basic data types and we're moving on to the objects, functions and arrays.
You lied to me?
I also said that we should come back and do our homework together. And so let's focus on that today, and from the next time we are really moving on to more advanced topics. But it's kind of important that we get Booleans right, because all our functions and if statements are based on those, and so it's very important that we get it right. So let's do it slowly but steadily, and we'll be moving on forward, okay? Okay, so no, okay, here. Homework. This was our homework from like 2 weeks ago. We had that statement. I wonder how many of you actually attempted doing the homework. So, is it true or false? And why? The whole statement evaluates to true. But are you actually capable of going through and being able to decide which one goes first and why? So, first things first. The order of operators. That's crucial. We need to know which statement goes first, or which operand goes first, which value should be decided on first, so that when we know which one goes first, we know which one goes second, and we reduce that statement to like mini chunks, smaller chunks, and once we have like whatever, like you will see. So the order of operators is crucial. And it's actually quite simple to recognize. Like for us, we had this basic maths. All of us had basic maths at school. So we all had this pretty basic knowledge that we know that brackets always take priority. No matter what happens, we know that we know that multiplication from maths, we know that multiplication would go before like subtraction, but because we have brackets here, we know we should take this statement or this operand first into our consideration. We have 5 minus 5 because it's in brackets, and this would give us 0. So we reduced our statement already, and so now we don't have 5 minus 5, we now have a 0. So what's next? Then the negation operator. Negation operator is marked by an exclamation mark, and so we should know.
You should know.
We at least should know that 0 in JS evaluates to a falsy value, so it's false. But because we put an exclamation mark next to it, it's now negated, and so instead of false, this would give us true. And so on the next slide, I marked it with red, flaring, red, true. So again, we already reduced our statement. We have less elements to work on. What's next? Then the multiplication. Multiplication we had in 2 times 10. Although 2 is in the commas, so it's a string. But we know that when it comes to multiplication, JS wants to help us, and even though one number is a string, JS will convert that number, that string, into a number, and so the 2 becomes 2 in string become a number. So now it's going to be 2 times 10, and we know 2 times 10 is 20. And so it's 20. What comes after the multiplication? Addition. So we have this statement here. We've got null plus 3. Again, the conversion should happen here. So the JS can see that number 3, can see the plus here, and even though null stands for no value, it should convert null into a 0. So 0 plus 3 would give us 3. Can you see how smaller it becomes? Like, once we are dealt with, well, we had to take the brackets first into consideration and figure out what's the value inside the brackets first, then the negation, then we take all the arithmetic operators, and the arithmetic operators come in the same order as per usual as if you did the arithmetic operation and math. And so once we are dealt with all of this and our statement is reduced to those mini components, then we are moving on to comparison operators. So comparison or relational. Yeah, that's the same thing. So we've got, is 20 higher or equal to 10? It would evaluate to true. And so instead of 20 bigger or equal to 10, we can substitute this with true. Correct. After the relational operator, we have the equality operator. And so it's, is 3 equal to 3? And this is the strict equality operator, so it checks for both value and the type. But in this case it doesn't matter because it does matter. It's 3 and 3, so it is equal. So it should evaluate to true. Now we have true, 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 or and. So, well, regardless of whatever operators would be here, we know that it should definitely give us true as a result. But let's check which goes first. So we have first, we are dealing with the logical operator of and. So we take this first and say true and true. Both have to be true on both sides. Both operands have to be true for the entire statement to be true. Since we have 2 values of true on both sides, it would definitely give us true. And we're at the finishing line here. We have like, is true or true? True would give us true. And well, this is the logical operator or. And even if one of those would be false, the entire statement would give us true. I pasted the entire statement in the console, but so because we work here on the values true or false, it would give us the value of true straight away. But normally you should use function Boolean and wrap the thing that you want to check in the parentheses, and this should give you the value. Is it true or false? Or the other way to check whether the value is true or false is double exclamation mark. 1 exclamation mark is a negation, but a double exclamation mark is It's gonna give us the value, is it true or false? So I'm just gonna take the one from the top, get 2 exclamation marks, and again it would return true. So you can see that it's true. It is, and I'm not joking, this is very important that you guys understand which one goes first and can apply this, because this is like a simple mathematical operation, and using some operators of like the arithmetic operators and comparison operators. And then in fact when you do your projects, you will need those. You will actually need those, and like you need those quick and not to think about it and consider whether this should evaluate to true or false. This has to be like immediate knowledge, and so learn by heart which one goes first, and then like once you get it, it's just easy. Let's go back to a presentation. So it's kind of important that I just finish off. I kind of like forgot that I should also include the logical operators, but not an if statement, because when something is in the if statement, it will always evaluate to true or false, and the result is going to be true or false. But then sometimes when we use the operators or and, it's like for instance here, is X or Y, what's happening here and what's the result going to be? And this is something we didn't go through, so I feel like we should do it now, and then we are definitely done with the whole basic data types and with the Boolean. So here, as I said, if we use logical operators in the if statement, so we've got that keyword if, and then in parentheses we have like our statement which will evaluate eventually to true or false, and if it is true, then this block of code will be executed. But if it doesn't, we can put an else here after the second curly braces, and after the curly braces and else we can include in another curly braces the block of code that should be executed if this statement doesn't evaluate to true. But what if there is no if statement? So for this we will use some real life examples. So for instance, if I put 5 or 4 in here, I love how the console is already giving the result, but then we still need to engage our brains and think about why is 5 the result of this statement here. It's 5 or 4. So as we said before, the only falsy value of the number in JS is 0. So both 5 and 4 would evaluate to true. And so we know that or, and if we use a logical operator or, only one value has to be true for the entire statement to be true. And so the program will go from the left hand side to the right and say, okay, 5 is true, so I don't need to check anything else because it's already true, and that's why it's going to print out 5. If I do true or false, it will go again, it will check true. Okay, this is true. I will print out true. I don't need to check the other value because I already know that the first one is true. But as you can see, it doesn't, in the first example, it doesn't say, okay, 5 is true, let's print out true as a Boolean. It would actually give us the value that is presented here. So just to be sure that it actually checks if one of the values is true, so let's say 0 or say 4. Now 0 is a falsy value and 4 is a truthy value, so it would check 0, oh no, it's false. But let's go to the other value, and it's truthy value, and it would give us 4 eventually. Now let's say I put Tom or Bob. Okay, and so strings, only an empty string is a falsy value. These two are not empty strings. So it will go first check Tom, it's a truthy value, and it won't go any further to check if the other value is true or false because it doesn't care. At this point, it only cares that the first value is truthy. It would print out Tom. It does print out. So, like, those examples may seem like very basic and like, okay, what do you need it for? Is actually this is like very often used in actual projects, in the actual programming, that you will try to assign a value to a variable, and depending on the user input, if one value is truthy, it would assign this value. If it isn't, if it's falsy, then it will go to the second value, like already set by default, or like it's very often used in the actual programming, and it brings many benefits. What else? Okay, so for instance, I would have 0. Sorry, my camera is like 0 or in string second value. So it would check 0. 0 is falsy. It would go on to check the second value, and this is not an empty string, so it would print out the second value. Or if we do no or 0, so here we've got 2 falsy values. So why does it print out 0? Because it goes from the left. So it checks. First value is falsy. The value is to false. So okay, I have to check the other one if it's true. And this whole statement kind of value is to false, but then it already stopped on the second value, and even though it's falsy, it would still print out the second value, because if both are falsy, then it would end up on the last one. So checks from the left. If first value is true, well, it converts the value to true or false, and if it's true, it would print out the first value, but if both are false, it would print out the second value.
That sounds logical.
And I think we can move on to our more complicated statement. So what happens if we have like more logical operators? We now know that the priority of operators is very important because it establishes the order we would do this operation in, but because here they're all the same, no, there isn't one statement or one operand that is more important than the other. So how it goes, we take false or 0. False is already false without even converting, so it says false. Let's move on to the second value. 0 is converted to false, and because both values are falsy, it would stop on 0. So it would take 0 as a result of this. 0 or an empty string, again converting both to false, so is it false or false, it would again evaluate the whole thing to false, and this would take an empty string as a result. So it's empty string or a null. And again, we're converting both values to a Boolean, and they both give us false. And the program stops at the second value. So it always takes the last one it would take when both are false. And I hope I'm not overcomplicating this.
Not at all.
Well then, if you put that in your console and analyze this for yourself, maybe a little bit later on, you'll see that I'm speaking the truth. And so the value here should be, what should be the final value? False or 0. Or an empty string, or a null, and the program would go from the very left to right, saying that all values are falsy. It would end up giving us the last value, so it's going to be a null. Variable A has got assigned value yes, and then variable B will either take a value of A, so yes, or the second value that I put like manually, not applicable. So what should happen here? Well, the program will take this the same as in the examples. Will take input in the place of variable A, will put a yes, so whatever is the value of that variable, and if it's true, it would just assign a new value of A. So B, variable B would be assigned a value of a yes. But if this was an empty string, as in the second example here, the variable A is an empty string, so it's taking with an OR operator, it would say, oh, this evaluates to false, let's check if the other value is true. So, and it would go on and put not applicable instead of this. I hope this is clear. Yeah, and again, this is super often used in the code. So you would say like, creating a variable A, if first value is true, assign this first value, or assign the second value if this one didn't check out. Or you create a variable, let's say B, and say check this value. Let's say we're creating an object, and so check if this property exists, but if it doesn't, do something. So let's say this evaluated to false, so because it doesn't exist. And so it goes on and checks the second value, and the second value is an action. So for instance, it would actually put that property, add this property to our object. So this could be an action. And I know this is not like super interesting, or it might sound a little bit boring, but again, like, good to know, good to remember, good to memorize, and good to like free all those resources so they are available to do some more complex stuff. If we have an AND instead of OR, this is our logical AND operator, X and Y. So what's happening here and what's the result going to be? if we've got a variable a as an empty string, and then we want to do variable b either, and then it's a or, but the logical operator and not applicable. So before we finish this off, let's open our console and let's just make sure that we got it right. Cool. So dealing with an AND operator. If I put like something in as a string and empty string, this works analogically. So if we put in logical operator AND, both operands or both values on both sides have to be true for the whole thing to evaluate to true when we do an if statement. If we are working on this as a simple instruction in programming, as in like, for instance, assigning a value to a variable, works slightly different. So instead of giving us Boolean, it would give us the value that is an actual value on either of those sides. Let's just analyze the code a little bit differently. So we've got something that evaluates to true because it's not an empty string, and goes on because both sides have to be true. It checks this is true, but the other thing also has to be true. Well, then it finds an empty string, and it would give us an empty string because this evaluated to false. So this doesn't evaluate to true because both have to be true. So the program is informing us that the second one didn't evaluate to true. So if I do no and some truthy value, so the program will go again from the left to the right. Then it checked, and already the first value is already falsy. So it feels like there is no point in going on and checking the other one because they both had to be true for the statement to be true. So it would give us the first value that it found. It's no. It's like JS is disappointed. Both values had to be true for it to be content, and so if the first one is already falsy, it would just not go any further and it would print out this first value no. Is it two more examples and we are done. So we have analogically, we have both falsy values, so let's say 0 and not a number, also a falsy value. So again, analogically, if the first value is already falsy, JS doesn't feel the need and to check the other one because what's the point? And give it 0, and if I put something on one side and blah on the other side, so we have both truthy values on both ends. So finally JS, wow, like damn, I've got a true value on the left hand side, let's check if the other one is truthy, and the other one is truthy. So the whole, like in the if statement, this would evaluate to true, but then again this is not an if statement, so it would give us the one of the two values So it checks. First one checks out is true. So let's check if the other one is true. And it is true. And since both are true, JS is satisfied. And in this case, would give us the second trophy value. And that is the end of it. Now we are truly done with Booleans and primitive data types, and I hope it would, at least in some way or for some of you, be beneficial to understand those. Thanks.